1.3 is out, and a lot of it points to the Iceberg REST Catalog. I've got two people here now who can say why it went that way and kind of the pros and cons on how those decisions were made. I'd like to introduce everyone to Mark and Jerry, our heads of product and tech, respectively. Let's go ahead and get into it. So with this release, I think things were leaning harder on the Iceberg REST Catalog than ever before. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you made the decision to do that?
Yeah, Adi, I sure can. We have several customers who are looking for some very specific features out of our Iceberg REST catalog. And in general, we've had phenomenal growth in that area. As you know, Iceberg is a dominant technology for the data lake. And there are many, many people who are looking to create data lakes and looking to Gravitino to support them in that effort, not only for Iceberg, but for all the other catalogs that we supplement to the Iceberg story. You can federate JDBC, and that means we allow you to add Oracle, Postgres, a Hive Metastore, and all kinds of other things to round out an Iceberg data lake. But in this particular release, Iceberg took on special meaning.
So for the Iceberg REST Catalog, I think it means a lot to the Iceberg ecosystem. So previously it has like a Hive Metastore, like other different catalogs, but they have a bunch of limitations. But REST Catalog has many advantages. So that's why we brought IRC at a very early version. But now, as Mark mentioned, that we have a lot of customers and we have a lot of requirements because the industry's trends come to like IRC. So we add a bunch of enterprise grade features and others to the IRC. That's why we emphasize a lot on this version, and to make this version, make IRC a very, very important component on this version.
Cool. Very cool. Let's step back and talk more about the storage aspect of things. So, I know people run catalogs across both S3 and ADLS and GCS. Gravitino being multi-cloud, I think, is one of the biggest things in this release, right? Would you talk more about maybe how we decided to move in that direction? Were there any kind of compelling customer asks that drove that, or what are your thoughts there?
Adi, that feature is one of my favorite features in this release. And with this release, Gravitino becomes one of the very few catalogs available that can host from a single catalog data sets that are on any of those clouds simultaneously. And that includes private clouds. So if you have a data center with a storage grid in it, you can have data sets on the storage grid right next to and in the same namespace as data sets on your S3 or on GCS. And I'm equally happy to share the credit, because not only did Jerry's team do a crack job of implementing this feature, but it was suggested by one of our longtime customers, Roku, and they wanted to do exactly what the feature does: integrate data sets across their enterprise onto one catalog. With many catalogs, if you wanted to do the same thing, you'd have to set up a catalog per cloud. So now you're dealing with 3 or 4 catalogs.
Mm-hmm.
So Gravitino just dramatically simplifies and consolidates the entire picture.
Jerry, do you want to talk about some of the challenges that you had in terms of making that happen? One of the things that makes it maybe a little bit harder for people to do out of the box without Gravitino?
Yeah, I think one of the major challenges to support like multi-cloud is the credential vending things. So you probably have different vended credentials from different clouds. You should pick one right one and manage the right one, and then inject into the client and make it work. I think that's a challenging one.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, as Mark mentioned, is that because we need to support like different cloud storage, so we build like a new file IO. Yeah, that's what we did in the Gravitino side. So to make it work, yeah.
What was something that you wanted to include in this release, but didn't make the cut?
My feeling is that the biggest one is like currently what Iceberg is still working on the low-level filter, right? That's what I remember, right?
Jerry, that's such a great point. We have been following the specification of Iceberg row and column filtering for quite some time. And while there's been a tremendous amount of progress, we just can't wait to get this thing into customer hands. We know that row and column filtering is a very important feature, so much so that every single engine out there has their own way of doing it. Every single engine I've ever seen. And the problem that creates is that if you like to use multiple engines, such as our customers who like to use Spark and Trino and DuckDB, then you have 3 different ways to perform row and column filtering. So luckily, the Iceberg committee has taken this on, and they're going to release a specification for row and column filtering that will be standardized across engines, and we just can't wait to ship it.
Yeah, yeah. And one more thing is the materialized view, right? Yes, we also not released in this version, and we will probably doing the next release, so make it happen because these two things are quite important, not just for the analytic workloads, but for the AI things, agent things, because like row level filtering and the column masking, it is important to let AI to, if you want to build a data agent, you probably ask questions from different users, but you need to fill out some columns and rows that not belongs to you. So that's why we need like row column level filtering, and also if we want to accelerate the query, so we have to have a materialized view. Yeah.
One of the things that I think that the Iceberg Committee has done particularly well in their design of materialized views is that they have made them first-class catalog objects. So you'll see them in the catalog. You have the choice to choose them consciously as any other data sets. So they're not built behind the scenes in some tricky way that lives with a bunch of logic somewhere and they're substituted in the query on your behalf, maybe sometimes, not sure. These are first-class objects that you will have the ability to manage. What you'll probably see is Gravitino manage them very similar to the very unique way that we manage table maintenance. Jerry, tell them a little bit about what you've done for table maintenance.
Yeah. In the last version, we introduced the table maintenance. This is a requirement for one of our customers, and also as well as a lot of customers, they want this thing. And for the table maintenance, it is quite close to the to the catalog, because when you have the metadata, the next step is you need to use the metadata to do the table maintenance things. So it is quite smooth to do these things in the Gravitino side. And we made it into the Gravitino because Gravitino can collect different kind of metadata like table, like column, like statistics, and we can define policy and others. And also we can define jobs and submit jobs to the job schedule systems. So it is by nature for the Gravitino to have like table maintenance service. And we did it in the 1.2, and we enhanced it in the 1.3, and we continue to evolve this to make sure that these kind of things can be supported for the Iceberg table, and even for the like other tables like Lens, like others, because they all share the same problems. They need to do the table maintenance in a async way or in a different way. So that's why we build this in the Gravitino. Yeah.
The only thing I could possibly add to what Jerry already said is that this is a good time to insert that Gravitino is open source based on community development from engineers and contributors worldwide. And while Jerry's team did a phenomenal job, he was ably assisted by Pinterest, who was primarily responsible for some of the ideas in it. So tell them a little bit about how that collaboration went.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of collaborations with the Pinterest guys. So the initial idea is from them. They run the Iceberg table on S3, and with the increased size and files and objects on S3, and the bill they will pay to AWS will be increased. But actually, they can do the optimization to save the cost a lot. And they run some benchmarks or run some analysis to see that there are plenty rooms to, for example, like merge files and to remove the open files to cut down the bills. That's the original idea, and they come to us and they think that because they already landed the IRC in the Pinterest like long time ago, and the next step is to also bring the TMS to their own environment, and with the TMS running, and they can apply their own strategy, because they have a lot of strategies or policies internally, but they do it manually. But with TMS, table maintenance service, they can do it automatically with Gravitino, and to save our effort and to focus more on how to write the strategy or write the policy instead of doing everything manually. Yeah.
Very cool. One thing that I think is kind of the headline for this release is governing in place. Right. So the natural inclination when you have a bunch of different data sources in a lot of different places is to try to unify them into one system. What was driving the choice behind the governing in place aspect of that?
Adi, I've identified a couple of customers that we've worked with in the past, and it really is true that Gravitino is a community of worldwide developers. In the case of this feature, we were approached by a large financial institution in the United States and asked to create what they viewed as the way IRC federations should work. They didn't see it in any other IRC product. And their concept happened to fit into our concept of federation very well. The idea is that you can create data mesh out of federated IRCs that exist throughout your environment. You can register IRCs one with another in order to create literally a data mesh. And you talk to your local IRC and express a query to it. And then that IRC federates to the appropriate IRC. Now, that alone is significant enough. But what's especially unique about Gravitino's concept is that we forward the user's identity to the remote IRC, and the remote IRC remains in a position of permission and authority control. So it's the one who evaluates the actual user's identity and permissions and grants or denies access based on rules you've put into the remote IRC. And so the idea of governing in place, you don't have to repeat all of the permissions that you have in the remote IRC, nor do you connect to the remote IRC with a service credential that's highly empowered. You connect through the identity of the user that's used to authenticate the query exactly as you would expect, and therefore you maintain the integrity of the permissions you already have. And I'm just so excited about this. I think it's a beautiful system.
Makes sense. One other thing that's new in this release are break glass accounts, which is a new concept to me, at least. I've never heard of them before. For those people who are like me and are not as familiar, would you explain what those are and why you chose to add them to this release?
Yeah, so the thing is that for the most of the enterprise user, they will use like the commercial IDP things like ID.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing is that they will probably have some different scenarios. For example, they will have like to the test in their own environment without connecting to their own companies like Azure AD, because that is not so convenient just for testing. So they have to manage the users groups themselves. So we provide such a local IDP to them. And another scenario is that probably there's some issues with network or other problems. And when we connect to the like Azure AD or others, and we have a local backup here, so we can continue to serve the users and others. I think that's the two major scenario, right?
Beautifully said, Jerry.
What's something that people get wrong when trying to understand the Iceberg REST catalog?
Well, the one thing that immediately comes to my mind is the fact that the Iceberg REST catalog is a specification. It's actually not a piece of code. You can't download you can download the Iceberg REST specification, but it's not an implementation. And so you may have certain impressions of the Iceberg REST catalog specification. And several customers have come to us saying, well, I would really love it if the IRC did this or did that. When in reality, the specification itself is fairly broad and permissive, and there are huge areas left up to the quality of implementation. That includes authentication and the way catalogs federate and a variety of other issues. And so if anyone viewing this tape has ideas that, gosh, I really wish that IRC allowed this or allowed that, what they may actually be facing is a limitation of their specific catalog as opposed to IRC, in which case we'd love to talk to them because we can either make open source opportunities available for them to contribute, or we can assist them with specific implementations that will help.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to add more. So regarding to the IRC, because it is open source standard or spec, so anyone can implement that spec and building their own IRC. And there's a bunch of IRC here. So I think the devils in the behind, or the challenge things behind, is that IRC is just spec. So so behind the spec, we still have a lot of things like authentication, authorization, security, enterprise support, and different enterprise and authentication and authorization support things, and also like the DR and others. They are not in the spec, and the people may feel that if we just follow the spec, then everything's done. That's not true, and that's the hardest problem we need to solve, and that's the true value of IRC. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other features in this release is the metadata caching, right? What are some of the concerns that you worked through in terms of how that might impact operations? Like, does a stale cache entry lead to a wrong commit, or what were some of the challenges in that aspect of things?
Yeah, so the metadata caching is the most challenging part in the Gravitino code. Yeah. So what we want to balance is the performance and the consistency, because these two things, it's like especially when you deploy the Gravitino into multi-instance, and it is like a CAP problem. And what we are trying to do is that what we did previously is that we sacrifice the consistency to achieve the performance. And such things, it's okay if the reader is much more than the write, but we still can have some occasion scenarios that the inconsistency problem will introduce some of the issues. But as we continue to evolve, we think that this problem should be solved. So we intend to use another solution. We use a OCC solution with a optimistic concurrency control. Probably it is short of this. And we use this solution to check the versions stored in the database. And if the version is not changed, then we will fetch it from the cache. If not, then the cache is invalidated, and then we will fetch again from the database. This sacrifices the performance a little bit, but it achieves the consistency. So with that and deployed in a multi-instance, then there will be no issue. Yeah.
So what that means is the rest of us get to enjoy the benefits. In many situations and in many products, the caching is buried within the engine, and it's an engine concern. And if anybody viewing happens to be using a consolidated product where the catalog is buried with the engine, I've seen situations where the product's query engine benefits from the cache, but if you attach Spark or Trainer or some external query engine, there's no caching whatsoever. This is a different situation because it's caching built directly in the catalog for the benefit of every engine. And what it means is that according to our estimates, 4x better read performance on hot tables. And so you're going to see some substantial performance improvements.
So last question, and I'll let you guys go. What's on the horizon? What are you most excited about in the next release beyond this?
We are getting ready to introduce what we call the enterprise release, which takes Data Strato, the company behind Apache Gravitino, in a new direction. We are going to be offering to corporate commercial customers a support line and some additional enterprise features that make the product especially well suited for corporate commercial production environments. So we're really excited about that. One of the things that we hope to introduce shortly in our 2.0 release in the fall is a host of semantic layer improvements, because agentic AI is all about semantic layer understanding. And so you're going to see Gravitino going in a whole bunch of new directions to provide governed views, governed metrics, support for ontologies, and a variety of other areas like governed tags in order to assist AI agents in producing the correct answer. So it's going to be very exciting, and we would love to reach out to anybody who has an interest in these areas.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining me, and thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.